everyone, you're listening to the Tea with Tanya podcast, and I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose. I'm a public health professional by day and your average tea-loving millennial and content creator by night. My goal for this podcast is to share public health stories, self-love and wellness tips, to educate and empower, and to promote positive living. This podcast is here to serve you. Join me in the tea tasting room to see what I have brewing for you. Hey guys, I just want to apologize in advance for the audio on this particular episode. I was having some technical difficulties on my end, but it's such a good episode and I want you guys to tune in and listen to it as I talk to Marissa. It's a really good episode, and definitely be sure to like, comment, share on social media, and leave a review. Let's get into this episode. All right, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Tea with Tanya podcast, and I'm here with a special guest. I know I always say all my guests are special, but whenever people take the time out of their busy schedule to talk to me, they're special. And I've been trying to connect or record with this guest for over a month now, guys, because you know what, life happens, and we're finally making it happen. So I am happy. Before I introduce my guest, though, I do want to say talk about the power of social media really quickly, because, I met our guest, Marissa, through one of our mutual friends, Amari. Shout out to Amari over at the Public Health Millennial podcast. But, we connected there, and I want to say, guys, that sometimes we often hear, social media is not good and it's too consuming, which it can be. But definitely, I have made connections via social media just from following someone, sending them a DM, and I feel like I have like lifelong connections just from utilizing my social media. So definitely want to say, if you're going to be on social media, you want to make sure that it's doing something for you, something that's going to be positive. So I'm definitely happy to have our guest today, Miss Marissa McKool. Welcome to the tea tasting, as I like to call it.
Thanks for having me.
How's it going?
It's going good. I got a lot of really exciting things happening. I feel like I'm like living in that energy and flow, and it's just one of those periods where there's some good stuff happening. I'm just riding that wave.
I love to hear that. I often tell people that I'm living on the other side of my karma. I don't know how to explain that, but we've all done some things in our young life. So I feel like I'm reaping all the blessings and good things are now coming. So I am definitely happy to hear that and to have you here. Guys, her name is Marissa McKool, and you know how we do it here. We're going to have her introduce herself, but I do want to say that she is the host of the Redefining Rest for Public Health Professionals. And let me tell you guys, her podcast, which we'll talk about this some more, but I've been listening to some of these episodes, and I'm like, where has she been? Like, I'm still learning. This is why she's here to talk to me and talk to you guys. So we're going to make sure we understand how can we redefine rest, what is rest, especially for those of us who are in the helping professions. So, hey, Marissa, of course, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. So, as you said, my name is Marissa McKool. I worked in public health for my whole career, basically. I knew I wanted to be in a helping profession from a very young age, found public health in my undergrad, got my master's degree, did a fellowship at the CDC, went on to some leadership roles at UC Berkeley School of Public Health. And in about 2017, I found myself really burnt out. I had just finished caring for my mom who had an unexpected illness, had a new job. Like everyone else in public health, there's a lot of stressors and a lot of challenges in public health. So found myself really burnt out, and I ended up hiring a coach and I worked with for several years and completely eliminated my burnout as a result of the coaching. And also so many other things. Like I was able to really, after that, get a new job with a $10,000 raise. I eliminated my dating anxiety, just so much growth from that experience. So when the pandemic hit, I looked around, like my colleagues and I had very similar challenges we were facing in work, but they seemed much more stressed out and overwhelmed than I did. And the only difference was that I had coaching tools. I had different skill sets to manage my mind. I wasn't a special snowflake. I wasn't smarter than anyone else. So I kind of had this moment of, wow, the public health field needs these tools that I've had the opportunity to learn. So I started my coaching business and my podcast, and I actually left public health as like a formal professional full-time last fall, and I'm now doing my coaching full-time, working with folks in public health, specifically on how to get more rest and reduce their overwhelm and create more time for the things they want to do. And a lot of my work focuses on understanding the ways in which we have been socialized to think certain ways or do certain things, and undoing some of that so we can show up how we want to, going after what we want to, not limiting ourselves, not believing unhelpful thoughts about who we are, who we have to be. And so I'll stop there. I'm sure we'll get more into it, but I'm really excited to be here and chat with you. And yeah, I loved connecting with you with the public health millennial network we're in and Amari, and that's just been a great kind of opportunity.
Yes, I'm happy you're here because I know I have some questions here that I wanted to ask her guys, but sometimes things just flow differently. So I know you said you would have left your job as a full-time public health professional back last fall. Being on social media, and I hate saying the word influencer because I don't refer to myself as an influencer, but you know what? Sometimes I think everybody can influence somebody, no matter how big or small it may be, right? And you often hear that, oh, you should quit your job and quit your 9 to 5 and go become a full-time entrepreneur. So I wanted to know from your experience a little bit, obviously you've been working in public health for a long period of time, but how has that transition been, being a full-time entrepreneur? How can you tell us, those of us who are one way burnt out from probably being in school full-time, working full-time, and then, you're seeing all these influencers, all these gurus on social media saying, oh, you know what, you should not be working for anybody. Don't work for any man. Just go ahead and quit your 9 to 5 and become a full-on entrepreneur. Like, briefly just tell us, that how that transition went for you. Again, like you said, you got a new job, you had like a 10K raise, but again, all of us here retire, like myself included here. But so how was it transitioning from being a full-time public health professional to now being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I think the advice that we hear, or even we tell ourselves sometimes, if we're, have a side gig or starting a business or want to be an entrepreneur, but working full-time or in school full-time or a full-time parent and in parenting, it's not quite the same as just quitting your job, of course. But
right.
I think part of the advice about or thinking about just quit my job, we're told that and we think that's the solution because we believe it will make it easier. Right? Like that's what we think. We'll feel better. We'll be less stressed. And I don't think that's necessarily true because what creates your overwhelm, your stress, your exhaustion is how you spend your day thinking. So prior to getting coaching, I worked a full-time job. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a side gig. I didn't really have anything else going on. And I was burnt out. This past year, before I quit my job, after I had done coaching, I was working full-time in my coaching certification, doing my podcast and coaching paid clients. And I was not burnt out at all. And I have a partner now. What creates your experience of overwhelm and exhaustion and stress is what you're thinking all day. If you're thinking all day, I hate this job, this is a waste of time, I'm too busy, there's not enough funding, there's not enough staff. And then at night, when you go to work on, like if you're an artist and working on your art and you're just thinking, this is never going to sell, this is never going to work, I need more time, I can't do this. Of course, you're going to feel hopeless and resentful and burnt out. But if you're in your job all day thinking, I can do this, I can work this, I'm glad I have this paycheck to support me. It's not the thing I want to do for the rest of my life, but I enjoy it. I have enough time. And then at night, you're working on your art and you're thinking, I love this, I'm so excited I get to do this. You're not burnt out. So that's not to say we don't face challenges, but what you are thinking as you're facing some challenges or even just an experience determines how you're going to feel, whether you are working 8 hours a day or whether you're working 12 hours a day, whether you're a single parent who has 2 jobs or whether you're, just out of college and living with your parents and have a part-time job. So I think I want to preference that because I think that's really important. My experience with leaving public health wasn't because I believed being an entrepreneur full-time would be easier or less stressful or I'd be able to make more money. It was because I actually just had an opportunity to. It felt like the right time. I knew I could have kept doing both and that was totally an option and I was okay with it. But I didn't go into being an entrepreneur full time believing it would be so much easier. It would be less stressful, because that just sets you up for disappointment, because there are just
Yes.
different types of stressors. There's just different types of challenges.
I do agree. It's funny that you said the way we think sometimes that can, make us become, in a sense, more tired. Because I have this saying, I like to say, push through no matter what. And then recently I was telling myself, okay, it's all good and well to push through, but then there are just days where, life is just really hard. Things are challenging. You don't want to, you need to rest. And we're gonna really and truly come and talk about the true definition of resting. But I would tell my sisters, life and death is in the power of the tongue. Be careful how we speak and say certain things. That you mentioned thinking, for me, I'm always telling somebody, like my go-to Marissa, I'm always like, I'm tired. I am always tired, Marissa. And I don't know if sometimes I was just telling my best friend the other day, I said, at this point, I'm not even sure if I'm tired or just like a figure of speech for me right now. But I remember being in a job before I started my job that I have right now. My first time in my entire life, I'm 32. I just turned 32 2 weeks ago, guys. But I never in my life have said I love my job. What am I? I have. Well, there was one job before that when working in the PQ, but prior to that, I've never said, "Oh, I love my job." I was always complaining. Like waking up was an issue. I'm a morning person. I have no issue waking up. Well, when you're thinking, waking up, going to a job that you don't like, complaining every second. While I'm taking a shower, I'm complaining. Even though I'm saying to myself, oh, yeah, I'm grateful. But then I'm still complaining at the same time. Get to this job, wait to see, when is it going to be 4 o'clock? I need to get home. So then by the time I get home, when I'm having to, let's say, record a podcast or write a blog post or create whatever content, the motivation is no longer there because I am honestly, actually, really and truly tired.
Mm-hmm.
So I just found that really interesting that you say sometimes the way how we think, because I always say my mind runs a million miles per second. Impossible, but I'm sure people can relate. You're thinking about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. How can I edit this podcast? How can I, you got to think about work. Then there's just so many things to life that you think about. And I think for me, and I don't know if you probably have any advice, but for me, like I say, some days I'm not as tired because before I had to factor in my commute to work because I was commuting like an hour and a half to and from daily. So that means I have to get up earlier to beat that traffic, in Atlanta at the time, because, Atlanta traffic just doesn't make any sense to me.
I remember I lived in Atlanta. I got you.
So, I'm having to get up extra early to make sure that I'm beating that morning traffic. Now I'm living literally 7 minutes away from where I work at. And I'm like, is that good or bad? Because I found myself still saying I'm tired. But it's like, I was tired physically. It probably was more of a mind. Like my mind was thinking so many things at the same time. But it wasn't like it wasn't anything negative per se. I was thinking about the next plan, the next step for my nonprofit or for just business, anything. But I'm like, are we really tired, as we say, Marissa, or as you say, is it the way we think? For those who are in college, during the undergrad or the MPH or master's program, whatever profession you're in, are we really as tired as we say we are, or we have to change really and truly the way we think? And how can we change the way we think in order to not be as tired?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think we first got to separate fatigue and tired.
That's a good one. Okay.
So fatigue is the physiological or physical experience. So there is a distinction. Like there are some, medical conditions that cause fatigue. When you have a cold, you feel fatigued. Sometimes if you don't get enough sleep, you truly do feel fatigued. But that is not quite the same as I think what most of us mean when we say we're tired. Oftentimes when we say we're tired, it's actually not fatigue. It's we are exhausted from what we're thinking about all day and what we're feeling all day. We're exhausted from feeling overwhelmed. We're exhausted from feeling like we never do enough, from telling ourselves that, we have too much to do and not enough time. So I think first you have to separate the two. And then second, I'll say our brains, when you start to understand how the brain works a little bit, our brains have a negativity bias that helps us evolve and survive, right? So when you think about thousands of years ago, someone whose brain focused more on the negative, i.e. remembering which berries are poisonous, were more likely to survive than the people who focused on the quote unquote positive, i.e. the berries that kept you alive and tasted really good. So we evolved with this negativity bias that really is intended to serve us, but now we're in the modern world with lots of stimuli. And for most people, especially if you're listening to this podcast, not in the same circumstances as thousands of years ago. Like you might have a roof over your head, maybe even a job, right? And relatively safe compared to, thousands and thousands of years ago. I'm not saying there's no danger, but just to put it in perspective. So one, that's like a natural habit of our brain. But what happens is it gets exacerbated for several reasons. One is what you tell your brain to think. It's like a hunting dog. It will go find that information. So if you're telling your brain that you don't have enough time, it's going to go find you all the evidence for that. If you're telling your brain that, you don't get any respect at work and no one values you, it's going to go find evidence for that. And that's kind of when we get into like complaining trap.
Yeah.
Is our brain kind of gets stuck there versus if we tell our brain, like this year, I have this board where I put the potential of 2022. I put like different potentials. And one thing I wrote was create time. So instead of saying, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy, because my brain will just come back with plenty of evidence of that, I'm asking myself, how can I create time? And I tell that to my brain over and over, and it goes, finds me evidence for that. So that's one piece. And then the other piece I think is really important to note is we have news and social media that is really marketing for clicks. So that means it is marketing towards and putting out stuff that has to do with like terrible events happening, tragedies, danger, fear mongering. Now, obviously, there are events happening in the world that are terrible, not to say that there's not, but that is kind of when you look at social media, especially if you don't curate your feed or who you follow specifically or the news, you're seeing so much of that. And that's amplifying our negativity bias, our survival mechanism. So that's all we're filtering in, and we're filtering out all the other information that exists that tells us maybe we do have time. Maybe I can make more money. Maybe I am okay. Maybe I'm not piece of shit. So I think there's like a combination of things happening here, but it is really helpful to understand how the brain works and has evolved, and in modern life, how that is serving us and how we have to be a little bit more mindful of what's actually happening.
That's so true, Marissa. I don't even know why in my brain I never really thought about it that way. So this is why we need people like you, out here doing the good work, letting us know, especially us millennials, because I really want to ask you though, what does rest mean to you, and why do you think it's important? Because again, for me, I had a question. I was talking to a friend recently, and I was saying, "Oh, I'm resting," but then my idea of resting means to not be sitting up doing something actively or physically, because I can still be on my phone checking emails, writing a post, or planning content or responding to emails, like doing, like I would say, the absolute most. But in my mind, I'm resting because I'm not physically, in a sense, maybe lifting a box or doing something. So, what exactly is your idea? And for those who are listening, what does rest mean to you, and why do you think it's important? Again, I know sometimes we have that cliche answer, oh yeah, you need to rest because you need to get 8 hours of sleep, or you need to be in bed by this amount of time, and if you don't get X amount of sleep, then you're not going to be able to function the next day. Like I've heard that all my life, in a sense, growing up. Like if you don't sleep for 8 hours, then you're not going to be well rested the next day. Especially, let's say you had an exam, you got to go to work, you're not going to be functioning. And I think for me, I've adopted that mindset, which is, I'm assuming, not a bad thing. But then there are just some days where I'm not going to get 8 hours of sleep because, again, I'm a young entrepreneur trying to get myself together as a doula, a nonprofit founder, a content creator, all these different things, Marissa, we got going on. And you still got to be a sister, you got to be a friend, you have a partner. There's so many things that happens throughout an entire day. When it comes to life. But then yet still, like I said, my idea for me as far as resting is just me not physically or actively doing something that I could be in the bed or I could be laying on the couch watching some TV, because that's my thing. I'm not gonna lie, TV or reading a book. But then I'm on my phone scrolling through social media, or I'm checking emails, responding to email. Again, like I said, planning to let my brain is being used, if that makes sense. So what does rest mean to you, who you're the rest advocate? Why do you think it's really important, like the true importance of rest, and not just the whole, eat, drink some water, go to bed early, and that's it?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the advice we hear about rest, the problem is they don't distinguish different types of rest. So there is rest you experience in your mind, physical rest, and physiological rest. So we got to distinguish a little bit. So with the sleep example, right? First, just to dispel some myths, yeah, I was totally told you have to get 8 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
More and more science and research is showing that actually everyone has a different number of hours their particular body needs every night. And you might have heard this. I heard this, especially in college and like early career. You have to get up early and be a morning person to be successful.
Yes, I've heard that.
Both those things aren't necessarily true. Again, when you think about it from like an evolution point of view, thousands of years ago, we needed some folks who were actually like night owls to watch the fire. Or we needed folks who were morning birds to get up and get everything ready. Like it makes sense that folks have different sleep needs for their body, whether they naturally like need 5 hours or 8 hours or 10 hours, or they work better in the evening and can stay up late or early in the morning. So it's not quite as like, okay, everyone needs 8 hours and you should get up early. And a lot of this and the studies show that actually what's more important is a consistent go to bed around the same time, get up around the same time, whether it's you go to bed at 1 and get up at 8 or go to bed at 10, get up at 7, So that is physical and physiological. Like when you sleep, your body goes into a lot of different processes to help your muscles recover, your blood pressure slow down, your heart rate, like so many things we're not even conscious of. And that is all important. But if you do not have a rested mind, you are not going to access the full potential of that physical and physiological sleep. Now, here's what I mean by that. We've all had it where we're laying in bed and we cannot fall asleep because our mind is just running, telling us we didn't do enough. We have to remember X, Y, and Z. We can't forget this. Worrying about the meeting tomorrow, worrying about the email. So to me, the work that I do and what I focus on is having a rested mindset. Like, can all imagine there's someone who's getting a massage who feels super rested. And then there's someone who's getting a massage who doesn't feel rested at all because they're just thinking about, I don't have time for this. I shouldn't have done this. I'm going to have so much to do.
Tanya.
Yeah. So same with running. Like someone could go run 3 miles and feel rested and someone else could not feel rested because they have no distractions from their negative self-talk anymore. And it's just running in the head. So to me, where we start to get more rest is actually in our mindset and changing kind of what our brain focuses on all day, what our brain believes, what our brain thinks. And it's really important to start to understand that what we are thinking all day, especially the thoughts that have to do with limiting beliefs about what's possible for us, about our worth and our value, a lot of those we have absorbed from the world around us, from family, from media, from toxic capitalism, from white supremacy, from the patriarchy, from religion, even if you're not a part of certain religions, right? So we absorb these direct and indirect messages. Our brain kind of, for efficiency purposes, tries to categorize the input we get and put it in different categories so we don't have to constantly be thinking about it. And then it spits it back to us in our own voice. So it sounds so real. So a lot of times, like the example I love to use is, I can't tell you almost every single one of my clients I work with, one of the main thoughts that causes them so much anxiety and overwhelm is I didn't do enough. I need to do more. That is a thought that I could probably go through each, especially systems of oppression, and talk about how those systems put out messages so we believe we aren't doing enough. So we keep hustling, so we keep grinding, so we don't give ourselves rest, so we're mean to ourselves, so we burn out and we take ourselves out of the game.
That's a good point, Marissa. I feel like you're speaking to me because I'm the kind of person, or even last night before recording this podcast episode, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I probably need to get back into therapy because I haven't been to therapy in 2 months because I've been moving, travel, it's just been a mess. But every time I'm thinking, like I said, my idea, I'm going to rest. So for me, I'm trying to choose between, okay, do I want to journal today? Do I not want to? Like I often say that there's a difference between being lazy and then being tired. But sometimes I think I'm starting to doubt now. Like, am I being lazy? Am I really tired? Do I really need to rest? So my idea of resting is just, let me not, again, like I said, be up and about. But I can lay and sit down and do something still. And then I'm sleeping, and then in my mind is telling me, don't forget you have this meeting at work. Don't forget you got to call us. So I'm like, am I sleeping or am I not sleeping? Like, that mind is really, then I do end up getting up feeling really tired then, because it's like, wow, when you had the opportunity to sleep, your mind was just elsewhere where it should have just been. Creating that mindset or that shift to, what, now it's time to rest. Let's turn off that aspect of your brain to not think about everything, which I'm sure, granted, sometimes that does happen because, again, life happens. We're not perfect, and we cannot always, some of us, I should say, cannot always turn off our mind, But why do you think, I'll say us as millennials because I'm a millennial. Why do you think we give up on rest in a sense? Because sometimes, like I say, for me, I'm sleeping, or I'm going to bed and I'm turning the TV off. Like, they even said, you know what, you need to turn the TV off by a certain time, because if you force to put the TV on, then your brain is not going to be at rest. So if you're on your phone, I'm not sure if you've ever heard that, but you need to be off your phone at least an hour before going to bed. That way it will let your mind or your brain slow down or something they said. So I started doing that. I went off and let me put my phone down an hour before actually going to bed. That way, let me see if it makes my sleep any better. I can't really say if that theory did work or not, because my mind, again, it still runs really, really fast. But why do you think sometimes some of us give up on rest in a sense where, okay, I can't sleep. What even is rest? Let me keep going. And then we've been taught to, like, keep grinding, and then I saw a phrase or something somewhere in Twitter. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that either. Oh, you don't need to sleep. Like I said, before, years ago, they would say, like, you need to go to bed early. In order to be successful, you got to be up by 5 a.m. Like, that's what I've heard for a while. Then no, I'm starting to see, or I'm hearing, you need to be a night owl, you need to not sleep, you can rest when you get to the money, and all these different things. So just like, why are we, in a sense, one, not prioritizing rest, or why are we giving up on rest? For so many different reasons. You could be a student, you could be, again, a young professional, you could be someone who likes to party, whatever it is. But for some reason, like, for us, I'll say this, like, back home in Antigua, we have Carnival, which is usually held in July to about August, right, Marissa? And we always have this phrase where, we call them fetes, like different parties, different events. And we're, you got to go to this fete, that fete. So there's one fete in the morning, one at night. She's like, we're not going to sleep because we got to go from one to the next. So it's time to go home, change your clothes, and come back. But we know that that's only for like a 2-week period, in a sense, as it relates to that carnival period. But I feel like some of us adopt that mindset in work now. Like, I got to hustle. I got to do my 9 to 5. Then when I come home, I got to work from 5 to whatever time. And then, I'm going to sleep when I get the money. So why are we not prioritizing rest anymore? Sometimes I do see that we're talking about, let's have a soft life. Let's make sure we're practicing self-care. But sometimes, I guess, even from probably my experience, I feel like me saying, I'm prioritizing self-care. It's just me saying words, but not actively doing it.
Yeah.
Or we're just not prioritizing or even actively trying to practice or rest.
I think one of the things that we have to start with is our unconscious beliefs we are not even aware that we hold. I like to use the lunch example. I know so many folks, this used to be me, especially in public health, who delay their lunch or eat their lunch while they're working or skip their lunch completely.
Me?
That used to be me. And when I talk to folks, and what I used to say is, well, I'm too busy. I have to finish this task. I have too much to do. But the unconscious belief under that we're not even aware of, is that we believe, because we've been told to believe this, we have to earn our rest. You have to deserve rest. Rest is a reward, and productivity matters more than rest. So consciously, we don't necessarily, like, if we saw that, we're like, no, we don't believe that, but they're unconscious. So they derive these actions of skipping lunch, of, not saying no when we really need to say no to things. And those beliefs have been fed to us, right? Toxic productivity culture, toxic capitalism tells us our worth is measured in our output and how much we do. Our value is measured based on how much we do. So we have absorbed that message and internalized it without fully being aware of that. And then we're hustling, and then we're trying to basically hustle to worth and value. And we could, same thing with the patriarchy. The patriarchy tells women that in order to prove your value and worth, you have to take care of everyone else first. That you can't say no, that's rude and that's selfish. And so then we're not doing all that. And then even, like, we could go through everyone. Like, even when you think about fat phobia, it keeps us telling ourselves we need to lose weight. We have to go on a diet. We have to look a certain way. And then we keep burning ourselves out trying to obtain that. So all of this is kind of tied to this underlying message we've been sold that in order to prove your value and worth and that you deserve rest and to earn rest, you have to hustle. You have to do more. Doing more is more important. And it's really important to understand that that is what's driving our challenges with actually A, choosing to take rest, but B, actually feeling rested. Because when we actually take time off, skip or take our lunch, we don't feel rested because our brain is still thinking, I have so much to do. I need to get this done, which really translates to, I haven't earned this rest. I don't deserve this rest. I shouldn't be taking this rest.
It's funny that you do say that because for me, like I said, my new job, I absolutely love my job, but then I'm being mindful of, in a sense, being burnt out too quickly because I'm working through my lunch break. Sometimes I'm actually forgetting to even take lunch. Then it's like, okay, why am I feeling so exhausted or as you say, fatigued in a sense? Because I haven't been able to eat to replenish myself, or even when I'm on my lunch break, actually eating, as I call, like I say, quote unquote, none of the healthy food because I'm trying to manage a healthy game right now. My mind is still thinking about, oh, when I go back inside, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z, or I'm trying to plan the rest of the day. So that's just, I don't know. I don't know why we do that or why our brain programs us to do that sometimes. But shifting a little bit, because you mentioned something about, eating through lunch. I do want to talk about what is the true purpose of a boundary in the personal and professional setting. And why I say that, because let a team really be transparent. Guys, Marissa and I were supposed to record this episode, let's say a week ago, because I don't know when you'll hear this episode yet. But at the very last minute, I had to postpone or reschedule because, my manager would have asked me to do something that wasn't on the cards for me to do that particular day. I'm the kind of person, guys, I often say I don't do well with change. I am working on that. That's one of my potential goals, Marissa, of 2022, trying to adapt to change, I guess, in a quick manner. But, if you tell me something is going to be done today, that's what my mind is going to be. It's going to take me a quick minute for me to wrap my mind around the unexpected change or the task ahead of time. I don't know why I'm that way. I am working on that. For me, even in my personal and professional life, and I spoke about this in the podcast before about creating boundaries. For me now, Marissa, I feel like I've created boundaries sometimes, both personally and professionally, but at the same time, there's a guilt that I feel. And I'm sure those of you listening can probably relate in a sense. There's a guilt that you feel when you're creating or you're making those boundaries, both from a personal standpoint and then from a professional standpoint. So if you can talk to us a little bit, Marissa, about what is the true purpose of boundaries, both in our professional and personal life? 'Cause like I said, for me, I thought I was doing well with creating my boundaries, keeping it there as it relates to friends and family. But then every time I keep creating these said boundaries, Marissa, I keep adjusting the boundaries to accommodate the person that I'm creating the boundaries for, and then in the end, I end up feeling guilty for one, creating the boundary, or two, I feel, how should I put it? Maybe overwhelmed or, overcome a burden because it's like, here I am going against my boundary, going against what I said I wouldn't do. So it's not, in a sense, bringing me peace because what? Now my boundary is not being respected, or this person will not even know that I have this boundary now because what? I myself have not been honoring my boundary. So what is the true purpose of a boundary, both in our professional and personal life, and how can we stick to that or maintain these said boundaries? Because again, growth and change is uncomfortable, but how can we really and truly say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do in my personal life as it relates to boundary, and then this is what I'm going to do professionally, that way to not cross that line. And of course, I use the word burnout all the time. I'm not sure it was the right word to even use, but for me, like I say, in the essence of even talking about rest, sometimes when you adjust or move your boundaries, I feel like something then that cuts into the time that you should be, in a sense, resting or trying to practice more rest. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, Tanya, you're going to get me on my soapbox. I can talk about boundaries all day. Sometimes I feel like, out in college campuses, those people come and get in your face and call you a sinner, which I don't agree with. But sometimes I'm like, I feel so strongly about boundaries that I feel like I could be that person at offices being like, let me tell you about a boundary, what really a boundary is. So the way we try to set boundaries and how we've been taught what boundaries are sets us up for a lot of emotional distress because we are told a boundary is something we set that someone else then follows. So we set it up where, okay, I don't like what this person is doing. I don't like that they're emailing me after 5 p.m. So we set a boundary where okay, I'm not gonna respond to emails after 5. expecting that will mean the other person will stop emailing us. If they just stop emailing us, I won't have to be as stressed. And then we communicate that, hey, please don't email me after 5. And then what happens? They still email you after 5 and you get really upset because they crossed your boundary. But that is not what a boundary is. A boundary is not something you set so someone else changes their behavior. A boundary is something you set for your behavior, because you can't control other people. You can't control what they do. Even if you make a request, they may or may not follow it. And that is their full right. They have free will, free choice, right? So to set a boundary for a behavior change that you're telling someone else they have to do, you're setting yourself up to be really upset, because they're probably going to keep doing what they're doing. Right?
Drag me, Marissa, drag me.
Yeah. And so in the email example, a true boundary would be, you don't even have to tell the other people that you're not checking emails after 5 p.m. You set the boundary for yourself. Okay, my boundary for me is to not check emails after 5 p.m. I am doing this for me, so I have my nights to myself. And then you have to change your behavior. You have to stop checking emails, even if you keep getting them. You have to not respond to emails if you do check them. A boundary is something you create for you that guidelines your behavior and what you will do for you, not for someone else, for yourself. And part of the reason that feels so difficult, and we can feel guilty when we do that, is because we first believe that we cause other people's feelings. And we're told this as kids. So we feel like, okay, well, if I don't check emails, then they're going to be upset. Then they're going to be behind. Then they're going to be mad at me. Then they're going to think I'm selfish and lazy. And so that's why it can feel hard. But that's not true. Like, you could not respond to emails, and for all you know it, they go, wow, look at Tanya not responding. I'm going to do that more. Or I'm so glad. Or they might even not be thinking about it because they really don't even need a response for 3 days. So we don't know what they think. We don't know what they'll feel. But that's none of our business. We don't cause that. The other thing is, sometimes a boundary that we set for ourselves means we have to say no to someone else. And especially folks socialize.
What even is that?
Yeah. Well, we need to understand, like, folks socialize as women, folks who have a variety of other marginalized identities. I see this a lot with my clients who are first generation or children of immigrants. We have been told that you can't say no. Whether that's because for folks socialized as women, the patriarchy tells us that's rude, that's selfish, or whether, like, for a lot of folks that I work with, they've kind of been told, well, they'll burn a bridge. They won't get another opportunity, which some of that is like white supremacy, being like, hey, if you say no, you will never get another opportunity. This is your only chance. So we have been told in so many ways, and it's many ways a lie, that we cannot say no. And we internalize that. And then saying no, like, triggers a stress response.
Like, I feel like I'm always learning some sort of lesson, Marissa. Like, I'm going to keep saying no. But why do I always feel guilty when I say no?
Yeah, because you've been told you have to.
And then, like you said earlier, as far as boundaries, when we set boundaries, it's basically for our behavior, not even for the other person. And I think, even though in the back of my mind, I knew this, let's hearing it from you, it's like, wow, you know what, Tanya, really and truly, here I am always creating or thinking I'm creating these boundaries so that this person, the person that I'm setting the boundaries, quote unquote, for, need to react this way towards my boundary, when in fact, it's all about me. Like when you said about checking emails, I'm obsessed with checking my emails, so I can't help myself. But as far as replying to, I feel obsessed with it, but I've been doing better. I've been trying to, after, if I'm busy and I can't get to my emails, I'll do that at night. But when it comes to like text messages or any sort of messages, it depends on who the person is. So guys, if you listen to this and I haven't been responding to you right away, please don't come for me. It's just that it depends on the nature of a particular conversation. If it's an emergency or a priority, then I'll respond. And even then now, I'm like, you know what? It's past 8:00 p.m. It's me time. I don't want to respond, or I don't have to. And I've been getting better with that, Marissa. And it's like for me, it's a good feeling that while Tana, you're actually sticking or doing something that you said you would do as it relates to some sort of boundary. Because I'm telling you, when you become so easily accessible, guys, to people, like to me, it makes it harder for us to create some sort of boundary because again, we're expecting it. We're expecting other people to respect us when we're not even respecting ourselves enough to make sure that we
Yes.
are in place.
That is
You know?
that is truly the ultimate outcome of setting a boundary appropriately, meaning it's for you, is what you will find when you do that. And it is work. Like it takes practice, right? Like it is a growth experience. But when you do that,
Mm-hmm.
what ultimately happens is you are creating integrity with yourself. You are creating trust with yourself. You are showing yourself you matter. You will follow up on your commitments to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That is the power of a boundary. And that is like ultimately you deciding you matter, that you're valuable, that you're worthy, that what you want is valid, that you can have it and you can make it happen. And that is the purpose of all of this work.
And I do want to say here, and I hope you can probably even chime in to Marissa, because I feel like, and this is from personal experience, if I can be honest here, like sometimes when we can tell that someone is setting a boundary, again, the intention is not necessarily to be mean or to let you feel bad, but I've been in situations where I can tell a person or I know a person is exercising boundaries for them based on what capacity they have in that given moment. And I've been guilty of getting upset. No, why did you even have these boundaries with me? You know who I am? Or, that may sound a bit, I don't know, conceited, but it's not even that. But it's like, you know what, for me, I may need that person in that moment, Marissa. And I'm like, oh, why can't you be there for me when I want to? Like I had a conversation with someone recently, and I was saying that I forgot what I was talking about, but I was saying something along the lines of, I'm always showing up for this person, or I'm always doing X, Y, Z for this person, and then the one time that in a sense, I can't be there for them because of, moving beyond my control, or I shouldn't even have to explain that to the person. Just say, I can't be there right now. I'm sorry. They were making me feel bad. I started making like a long list for this person. I was telling them, this is what I did for them. I remember this part, and I went back like even 3-4 years, Marissa. And the person said to me, they were like, you got it's not even about what you've done for a person. This is, if that's your boundary, then that's your boundary. But at the same time, if you're going to do something, they said, what's right? And I was like, what is right? I don't even know what is right in this moment. It's just that, I cannot show up for this person in that way, right? And the person kept saying, do what is right, do what your heart is telling you. If you going out of your way to show up for this person is going to be a burden for you, then that's not the right thing. And I just found that, in a sense, mind blowing, Marissa, because I'm like, okay, we talk about one, me trying to set boundaries, but then feeling guilty for setting said boundaries, but then when the tables are turned, the other person setting their boundary, and no one just said no. I'm left feeling, or as they say, in my feelings, and I don't know. So how can we? I guess what I'm trying to ask, I don't even know if you can answer that, but for those of us when we can tell somebody's exercising their boundary, how can we not? Again, feelings are feelings, but how can we not be, in a sense, upset at somebody who's exercising their boundaries based on what they have going on?
Yeah, I think there's two things at play here. One is I see this a lot in relationships with friendships or like significant others, this tit for tat. Like I keep this list of all the things I do for you, so you should be doing at least equal for me. So we keep this score and this tally, which just sets us up for resentment. Again, we can't control someone else and their choices and what they do. And also, the truth is, we have full choice in what we do or do not do. If we are making choices to show up for someone and help someone just so that they do the same for us in return, that's not really serving either of us. If I show up because I want to, because it matters to me, because it's a value I hold, then it won't matter as much if they choose not to come help me. So that's the first thing. And then directly related to that is I find often when someone else sets a boundary and we feel upset by that, what's underneath that can be very subtle and unconscious is actually a little bit of envy. Like we're a little bit envious that they were able to do that and we want to. And because we have this tit for tat, we kind of get confused and we get into the tit for tat. Well, I did this, you need to do this. But underneath that is a little bit of envy of like, well, I wish I could do that. I did all this for you kind of piece. So I think there's a couple layers that are going on here, but ultimately all of this boils down to the fundamental truth that the only real direct control we have is over what we choose to do, how we choose to show up. And we can't control someone else, how they feel, what they think, how they show up. And so we have to bring it back to us and focus on us, because if we just focus on other people, we're just going to end up resenting them or resenting ourselves or being upset because we can't control them. But we can come back to us, make different decisions for us, make different choices if we want to, or keep making the same choices. Like, that's where we have power.
I'm just going to say thank you right in the middle of this podcast for even coming on to talk about this, because I've just never looked at some of these things that we're talking about as deeply as we are discussing it right now, because it's always like surface level to me in the moment until, something negative happens or something bad happens. Like, oh, let me sit and think and reflect and, oh, this is what I need to do. But then I don't, in a sense, necessarily do that. But going back to the topic of rest, now you talked to us a little bit about your podcast. Like, let us know. I know you rebranded and you have a new name and everything. So tell the audience about your podcast and, of course, about your coaching program, which clearly I think I'm going to have to sign up. And guys, I'll put all this in the show notes so you can have, because again, if you've come this far in the podcast, which I hope you did, as we're seeing, we're talking about prioritizing rest. And again, not just the surface level of what rest is. Oh, go to sleep at 10 p.m., get up at 6. No, there's more to that than just doing anything like that. And I know, Marissa, you would have mentioned the physiological aspect of it, the rest in the mind. We even touched on the unconscious belief. Again, and the way we sometimes that we become so tired, guys, like she would have mentioned earlier, is because of our mind and the way in which we think. So if we have a job that we know, okay, we don't like it, hey, do something, I guess, to change it, right, Marissa? But you know what? I guess you'll answer that. But tell us about the podcast. Tell us about what you're doing and what are your goals as it relates to when you're redefining, rest. Like, how can we? I don't know. What are some actionable steps we can take to rest? Again, like I said, lying on the couch, that's just one thing. But what are some real actions we can do as it relates to rest?
Yeah. So I will say everything we've already talked about is rest, right? When we start to set boundaries in a way that serves us, that becomes restful. When we start to learn how to say no, that becomes restful. So like everything we've talked about is rest, which is why I call the podcast Redefining Rest, because we have been sold this idea that rest is, a massage. Rest is a vacation. Rest is sleeping. And like all those things can be restful, but rest is so much more than that. And it's not just like a small piece of the pie. Rest is part of the full human experience. So that's why I called it Redefining Rest. What we really do on the podcast, we talk about all the things we talked about today, about like how to create a rested mindset, how to own your power, how to really focus on where you have control, how to decide what is rest for you. So there's a lot there. I think we're a little over a year in, so folks want to check that out. But to leave you all with some kind of where to start. First, one thing I really recommend, and Tanya, it sounds like you journal sometimes. I call these thought downloads, and it's not quite like journaling. So what I find, there's all sorts of types of journaling, but I find with journaling, right, we're kind of writing out the story in our head, which is fine. I do that sometimes, but thought downloads, I recommend you almost write it in a bullet point. One thought, which means one sentence in each bullet line, in each line. And that way, it's less of like, I'm just repeating the story my brain's telling me. And it's like, I can put it on paper line by line and then examine those thoughts with curiosity, like you're a researcher. And don't believe that they're necessarily true. Like, give yourself space to challenge them, to not just immediately believe what your brain is telling you is a fact. So that I would start there as like a concrete activity folks can do. I do this every single day almost, like probably 5 days a week. Now, you might start and do it once and then not do it again for a week or 2 weeks, and that's fine. It's all a practice. The other thing I will say is, I say this a lot, when you are practicing taking rest. So if rest for you is actually taking your lunch, if rest for you is getting up 10 minutes before your kids so you can get 10 minutes alone, like whatever it is for you, what I want everyone to know is it's not going to feel good at first. We have this idea that rest should just feel good. And then we go to try to take rest and it feels terrible. Our brain, we cannot quiet our mind. And that's nothing's gone wrong. Like often I think we go, oh no, well, I better go back, do that activity my brain's telling me. No, nothing has gone wrong. You are just resting in a way that goes against what you've unconsciously believed, which is that it's a reward, that you have to earn it, that you have to deserve it. So of course, when you go to take your lunch, if unconsciously you still believe those things, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And that's okay. It doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. You can allow the discomfort. You can allow it to be a little awkward. You can allow your brain to chatter off. Like that's part of the practice when you first start doing this work is like you have to go through that period of discomfort because that's what will change your mindset and your brain ultimately.
Well, thanks for saying that, guys, and I hope you guys are really going to take this. I do like the idea of the thought download. So, because I do journal every day, and then I kind of fell off at one point. I'm like, I need to get back on track because I realized for me, I hate saying my life is better, but when I write, it does, I'm able to express myself outside of having to always, let's say, run to a friend or family member because, keeping in mind that, again, these people also need a break or rest from me. If that makes sense. You come in and you're offloading or downloading to somebody else, and then it's like, okay, they got to deal with their problems, then mine, then when do they find time to actually truly rest? So definitely I do journal. So I am going to adapt the thought downloads to that same journal where, we have like bullet points and like you say, one sentence. And I think from what you said too, I want you guys who are listening to understand that growth, it's uncomfortable. And I'm learning that. I'm in my growing phase of so many different aspects of my life, and it is so uncomfortable. But I also know that the reward is going to be much better,
Yeah. Growth is uncomfortable.
That's all it is. It is so uncomfortable. I'm like, why do we have to grow? Why can't we just stay here? Like, I turn into a big baby, but at the end of the day, obviously growth has to happen in order for us to evolve in life. So definitely, guys.
But guess what, Tanya? Everything you and everyone else listening and myself, everything we want in our life is on the other side of that discomfort.
Ooh, yes. Say that again.
Everything you want, whether it's more peace, being more present in your life, growing your business, making more money, whatever you want in life is on the other side of that discomfort. And to get there, you let the discomfort and you grow through the discomfort, and that's how you'll get your dreams.
That is so true, guys. I mean, how else can I continue this podcast after that nugget or that gem that Miss Marissa just dropped? Drop for us, but definitely let the people know, Marissa, where they can find you and definitely go subscribe. First of all, I just want to say, Marissa, that your speaking voice, I don't know, like for me, I don't even know how I have a podcast. I'm not even the biggest fan of my speaking voice, but your speaking voice, like, when I'm in the car listening to your podcast, which that comes out every Monday, I think it is, but I should tell you. But the way you speak, especially the things that you're talking about, guys, I'm telling you, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed to her podcast because she is dropping gems as the young folks, how we talk these days. But her voice is also soothing and calming. So you definitely want to check that out. So Marissa, I do want to thank you. I know you have a new podcast talking about PTO, but that's probably going to be a whole other podcast when we come back here because I haven't listened to that. I'm not done listening to it yet, but again, it comes down talking about taking time for yourself. Like for me, I'm going on vacation in July, guys. I'm going back home to my country.
Yeah.
I'm feeling. I'm like, oh my gosh, should I be going home? I haven't been home in 2 years since, because of the pandemic. I miss my family. I need to go to the beach. But for some reason, I'm just here feeling, in a sense, I'm not going to say sad because I'm happy to go home, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm leaving XYZ tasks. A mess. Guys, all I'm just going to say is just try to make sure that you're prioritizing rest, taking time for yourself. Like Marissa would have said, rest could be, it starts from the mind, and it's a physiological thing as well, but you want to make sure that you're being mindful of doing what you think.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great. I was so happy to be here and have this conversation with you. And I'm so excited you're taking vacation and you're going home. I'm so proud of you.
Yes. Definitely going to be practicing rest, trying to take us. Guys, as she was talking, I literally have like 2 pages. I got some sticky notes. I got pages. I got everything, here just to make sure that I'm applying these things, and I hope you guys will too. And of course, I'll definitely share the show notes. Make sure that you are subscribing, leaving us a review so we can know how we're doing in this podcast world. Definitely. And thanks for being a guest, Marissa. Appreciate it.
Thanks.